Welcome to the Real Estate Pulse with MacQueen and Gottlieb. I'm really happy to be joined by Patrick MacQueen, Ben Gottlieb from MacQueen and Gottlieb, the #1 ranked real estate law firm in Rankin, Arizona. And guys, I want to talk to you about something today. You've both recently written stories that we publish on azbigmedia.com that got a lot of attention. Ben, I want to start with you. Monsoon season is coming up. I didn't even think about how it would impact real estate, but you wrote a story that people have a lot of questions about. So tell us a little bit, how does monsoon season impact real estate?
Sure. So Arizona is one of these unique states. Everybody thinks of Arizona as an incredibly dry state, which it is. But what a lot of people overlook, especially people not from Arizona or new transient residents that are coming down and moving to Arizona, is the fact that we have a monsoon season, and it runs from every year from June till the end of September. And while it varies, oftentimes monsoon season will be accompanied by very intense rainstorms. Sometimes they can last 3-4 days. A lot of long-term Arizona residents remember back to 2014, we had one of the most incredible monsoon seasons in the past 100 years. We had recorded 4 storms that exceeded the 100-year storm measure. And that's basically a measure that a storm is only likely to recur in an intensity and size once every 100 years. Well, we had 4 of those in 2014. And there was this big outcry because a lot of neighborhoods were just completely flooded. And the city of Phoenix had to come in and figure out how to remedy the damage and to restore the neighborhood in a way that it wouldn't recur. Also, we had individual homes that were flooded. We had a big case that went to trial because a neighbor benignly constructed a fence around the perimeter of their property, and it was a block fence. And these 2 homes were situated at the base of South Mountain. And in August of 2014, one of those 100-year-plus storms occurred, and the expert at trial testified that 50 swimming pools of water in a 15-minute period were diverted from the wall directly towards the neighbor's front door porch. And the home suffered flooding, not just the yard, but the actual home. And so there's a state law on the issue. Most local municipalities also have local codes and ordinances on the issue. And it's unlawful in Arizona to alter or change or develop your property in a way that changes the local drainage or the nearby drainage conditions. So easy example of that would be the construction of a wall. Maybe you're importing dirt fill for a landscape project and you want to make your yard look better, but you're inadvertently or unwittingly raising the elevation of your property in relation to your neighbors. And then during a big rainstorm in monsoon season, that's going to have a negative impact on the neighbors. So it's an interesting area of the law. We've gotten over a dozen cases on it over the past couple of years, so these cases do come in way more than you think. And of course, if there's a big rainstorm, you're going to have bigger cases.
Yeah, and Patrick, we've talked before, but over the last year, since last monsoon season, the real estate market has really gone crazy. A lot of people have bought houses, and this is going to be the first year they've been in the house. You've talked before about when the rains come, the problems arise. So what do people need to be looking for as the monsoon season comes in if they've bought a house in the last year?
Well, certainly, any foundation issues that if you start seeing any cracking, if you start seeing anything at the base of your foundation, that may be an issue. Monsoons and roofs are big. That's where we usually see the biggest impact for people's homes, and warranty issues that may come up. But I would say, making sure you get an inspection prior to buying your house. Making sure, frankly, I get a home inspection at my house once every couple of years just to make sure that the systems are still kind of up and running. I'm not real handy, and so that to me is kind of good preventative maintenance to know what I need to do. Now, that may not help in all situations, because I've had situations that, just like Ben is talking about, where a neighbor blocked a fence or blocked a water course, and there's not much you can do in those situations. So if you see that your neighbors are blocking the natural way water flows, if it flows down the street, if it flows from the back of your house, if you're up on a hill a little bit to the front or whatever it is, if you're starting to see blockages, figure out where those blockages are coming from before one of these major storms comes from and or comes to hit you, and maybe have the conversation with your neighbors that says, hey, look, your dog fence back here is starting to catch up with some debris. Can you clean up this debris? I'm really concerned about monsoon season. Have that conversation. But yeah, so if you get an inspection prior to buying the house, if you get an inspection once every couple of years, and then checking when we have these lesser storms where that water flow, and if it's getting blocked at all, then take a look at that and try to fix that before it becomes one of these major blockages.
Okay, so Ben, if somebody sold a house in the last year, monsoon season hits, and all of a sudden their old house has a bunch of problems, are they still liable?
Arguably, yes. I think if a seller made developments to their property that caused a violation of the law and did not disclose those developments to the buyer, and the buyer unknowingly walked into that situation, I think arguably that is material, and that could lead to a non-disclosure claim. So that's the other big piece here is I think if home sellers are selling their home right now thinking maybe it's the peak of the market, and they recently made developments to their property, they need to be very careful about disclosing those developments made to the property because they ultimately could be walking into a non-disclosure case if they don't.
Okay, so if you want any more information about how monsoon season impacts the real estate industry, make sure you check out Ben's story on azbigmedia.com. Just search for monsoon and it'll come up. And if you have any more questions about monsoon, make sure you email him at ben@mnglaw.com. So Patrick, you also wrote a story recently for us about new real estate laws, and that got a lot of attention. Can you talk a little bit about what people need to know about new laws coming into the real estate industry?
Well, we obviously have the homestead law, which we've talked about. That started January 1st, 2022. But we also had Governor Ducey sign into law, and it was very well supported, a new real estate investor or wholesaler disclosure law. And it was codified in House Bill 2747, I think that's what the number was. And what that requires now is if I'm a wholesaler, which I can explain what that really is, I now have an obligation to disclose that I'm a wholesaler. Now, traditionally, real estate agents involved in a real estate transaction have had an obligation to disclose that they're a real estate agent. Well, now, if I'm a wholesaler, I also have an obligation to disclose my status as a wholesaler. And so the goal, I think, of that law was to maybe create a level playing field between the wholesalers and sellers and buyers, perhaps. We haven't seen the true impact of the law yet, but what we've come up with thus far are disclosures that if you're a wholesaler, you can provide to your seller or your buyer. Now, let me explain a little bit more about what a wholesaler does or what a wholesaler truly is, because it's a little bit of a different type of real estate transaction than the traditional brokerage model. Okay, brokerage model is you go and list your house with me, I go and sell it to a buyer, me and the buyer's agent get a commission. In this scenario, let's say I'm a wholesaler. Well, I'm a real estate investor. I go out and I find a property to buy, usually from a seller. Usually it's a distressed property. It's not listed on the MLS. It's perhaps I have a list of people who may be having a distressed situation. I go to them and say, look, I will buy your house, usually below market. Again, this is a distressed situation, usually below market. And I'll tell them, I will buy your house for $300,000, even though it's probably worth $350,000, $400,000. I'll buy it right away. We'll close in a week. I won't ask you to make any repairs. And then what I'm doing as the wholesaler, so we've entered into this contract. I've entered into the contract with the seller. I'm out there shopping this property for me, frankly. And I've got this contract. And what I'm doing as the wholesaler is I'm looking for somebody to assign this contract to. Okay, so let's say that I'm under contract with you for $300,000. I go and turn around and assign this contract for $350,000. Well, the difference is what I make on the deal. I never have to use my own cash. I don't have to do anything. I don't really have to perform much, and I'm going to make $50,000 on this because I found a buyer who will pay a little bit more than I was willing to pay for it. That's what a wholesaler does. They go and find these properties wholesale. And then they assign the contract. So they're never really taking title, and so now they have an obligation to disclose to that seller, hey, I'm a wholesaler. Okay, now, I don't know what that disclosure really. I don't know what difference that's going to make. If it may trigger some sellers to say, hold on a second, you're not a real estate agent. Hold on a second, this is not a traditional sale. Maybe I should talk to other people about this sale. Maybe I could get more for the property. Who knows?
Do we see that more among like the house flipping industry, or is that individual buyers?
Well, there's a lot of house flippers who are the end buyers from wholesalers.
Okay.
So there is a component of house flipping in this as well, because we have this group of investors out there who they're good at house flipping, they're good at remodeling, they're good at those types of things, but they don't have the boots on the ground. They're not out there actually finding these deals. So they go to a wholesaler to find those deals for them.
That's great.
So now this wholesaler has an obligation to tell the seller, hey, I'm a wholesaler. Okay. That's really the only obligation. We've come up with language, so if people need that, they can email us and we'll give them the language. They've also got an obligation to disclose to that end user, hey, I'm a wholesaler, and you're not really getting title to the property from me. Okay, you're actually getting title to the property from the beginning seller. And so so there's these two disclosures that usually need to be made now. Failure to do that can result in a loss of earnest money. That's all you really lose there. But now there is a disclosure requirement. And so the hope, I think, of the legislature is to level the playing field a little bit, to get people to understand that this is a different type of deal, and it may not be the best deal that you can get.
Ben, are the laws that deal with real estate in Arizona idiosyncratic to Arizona? Like, because I know we have a lot of investors come in, we have a lot of people come in looking to make a quick buck because our market is so hot. Are there laws that are idiosyncratic to Arizona that people need to know about if they want to come in and do business here?
I think it's a great question, and I think yes, there are. I think Arizona is a very business-friendly state. I mean, we've talked about it on prior episodes, but for example, our laws pertaining to short-term rental are more business-friendly than a lot of other states. So if you're a real estate investor and you're surveying or contemplating investing in a number of states, Arizona is probably going to be at one of your higher-end states in terms of investing in a short-term rental, just because of the state law that we have and the protective measures that are in place. So yes, I do think there are laws that are idiosyncratic to Arizona and beneficial to real estate investors. Like Patrick noted, I don't think this law is going to have a radical change on the industry. I think before, sellers were aware through the assignment contract that wholesale buyers were intending to assign the contract. Well, now those wholesale buyers need to explicitly disclose, I'm a wholesale buyer. And whether that's going to have some kind of material change or slowdown in the industry remains to be seen. I don't think it will. It might have a minor impact. There might be a transaction here or there where the seller says, oh, I wasn't quite aware of this and I need to slow down here, or maybe I need to choose another buyer. So you might have a little bit of that, but ultimately I think most of these transactions, the seller was aware that the buyer could assign ultimately the contract, and that was the intent through the language of the contract. So I don't think it's going to have a major impact, but absolutely.
Okay, we're running out of time, but Patrick, anything else from a legal standpoint that people need to know about changes in the law in 2022?
Well, if you need that disclosure that we offered, you're more than welcome to email us. We've received a lot of requests since this came out. Can you formulate a disclosure for us? What a lot of wholesalers were doing was in their contracts with their sellers is they would put the words and or assigns, meaning that they could turn around and assign this contract. I don't think under this statute that language actually works anymore. So that's one of the issues. A couple of the other issues, you mentioned the idiosyncratic nature of some of the laws here. We've got the homestead law that's idiosyncratic to Arizona, the short-term rental laws for sure, or the decisions that have been made and the statutes that we have. We've also got this condo termination law that is very idiosyncratic, which we can get into, which allows for the development of perhaps greater space from condos to apartment to high-rise, that sort of stuff. That's very idiosyncratic. And then we've also got landlord-friendly laws, pretty landlord-friendly landlord-tenant laws. And so, yeah, I think we've got a lot of interesting laws here in Arizona. It keeps our kids in diapers because we got plenty of work doing it. And so, yeah, there's, to me, keep an eye out on the homestead law, keep an eye out on this new wholesaler law, keep an eye out on the changes to the short-term rental stuff.
Sure.
Sounds like we'd have more diapers if we were in wholesaling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if you have any questions about real estate law, make sure you contact these guys. They're the best in the business. And how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. My email address is patrick@mandglawgroup.com, and it's all spelled out, or 602-533-2840.
And Ben?
Yeah, I'm Ben at mndglawgroup.com, and same number, 602-533-2840.
Yep. mndglawgroup.com. And if you want to read the excellent stories that these guys wrote, go to azbigmedia.com. Thanks again for being here, guys.
Thank you.